I think some people can get kind of wound up on like sticking to what they do and getting better at that one thing, but not utilizing all of those skills at once and like giving yourself the permission to kind of be a beginner again, stepping down from a leadership role. Like right now, I'm like actively stepping down from Drupal mentor coordinator, because when I say no, it gives someone else a chance to say yes, and stepping down gracefully is part of being a leader. So that way I could move into the conflict resolution team. And now I'm learning about that kind of stuff. So allowing yourself to get into those leadership roles, mentor someone into those, and then move on to the next thing you might have some interest in or not have an interest in, but there's a gap to fill, just being able to take those chances and being willing to not be good at what you do for a while. And I'm really good at that.
Welcome back to Everyday Heroes, a podcast about the unsung heroes of the tech world. From the phone in your pocket to the world's most critical digital infrastructure, open source software has a hand in it. These free technologies that shape our digital world wouldn't be anything without the heroes that maintain them, promote them, and evolve them. These are their stories. I'm your host, Hayden Ballio, and I'm here with my co-host, Wendy Hurst. What's on your mind today, Wendy?
Sup? Nostalgia. I'm feeling a little nostalgic today. I often go through old things in my house. It's just kind of what I do. And I found the very first digital camera that I ever bought. It's a Canon PowerShot A510. You cannot buy them anymore, but this might look familiar from the early 2000s, maybe 2004, 2005, something like that. I think it still works, but there's no battery in it.
That was peak technology back then.
It was. I bought it at Walmart. It has 3.2 megapixels. That was better than the camera, like the computer cameras you could buy at the time. I don't know if you remember like jam cameras. They were really, really low pixel. At the time that I bought this, they were like, this is the best camera you can get in this price range. So I bought it.
Well, digital cameras at the end of the day were also just like, because, we grew up where it was like you were using film, right? So just the fact that digital cameras were just an invention all to themselves. They were just like, what? Wild.
That was the very first digital camera I ever bought.
Yeah, I remember when the photo like things came out where you could have all your photos, like you put your SD card in or a USB, and it's like all your photos would be on. Like then people I remember we got one for my grandma, right? Because they're like, this is cool, and so you could see all the pictures. But yeah, well, old tech is kind of our thing here. Well, Wendy, we're not here to talk about hero devs, though, are we? I'm actually thrilled to announce today's guest. She's a true powerhouse in the tech world and a master at building connections. She's the certification community architect at the Linux Foundation, supporting their education team in creating and maintaining certification exams. Beyond that, she's deeply involved in the Drupal community as a mentor coordinator, a Drupal camp organizer, CWG conflict resolution team member, and a board of the Colorado Drupal Association. She's also a champion for accessibility through Ally Talks and a member of the CNCF's Deaf and Hard of Hearing Working Group. Her unique ability to connect people, whether they're writers, coders, or designers, helps open source communities thrive. And her background as a hospice nurse gives her a rare and invaluable perspective on end user challenges. When she's not changing the tech world, she's geocaching, exploring mycology, or tinkering with air-cooled Volkswagens. Oh, and she's legendary for being able to spell diarrhea without spell check. Please welcome the amazing AmyJune Hineline. AmyJune, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. That was quite a little introduction, wasn't it?
Well, good. I hope that I hyped you up appropriately. That this is Everyday Heroes. This isn't Everyday Average Joes, AmyJune. This is Everyday Heroes.
There is one big thing you missed on that list.
Okay.
I won an Aaron Winborn Award in Drupal in 2021, and that's a pretty prestigious award. So we'll just end the list with that. Okay,
gotcha. All right, I'll make sure that I put it in the show notes that I messed up and missed out on your prestigious award. Yeah, no worries. But AmyJune, we don't start this podcast out like most podcasts. What we do is we play a game to start off to get to know you a little better. And I'm going to let Wendy, our games master, tell you all about it.
Today's game, to start with, is just a simple word association game. I'll say a word, you say whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be connected at all. It's just kind of a fun way to get to know you and see how you think. Are you ready?
I'm a little nervous, but okay, we can do this.
There's no wrong answer in this one, AmyJune. Okay. Adventure.
Music.
Dream.
Scary.
Coffee.
Yes.
Favorite.
I was going to say cantaloupe because it's not my favorite, but that's three words. Okay.
Hobby.
Geocaching.
Inspiration.
Milo Ackerman from The Descendants.
Okay. Memory.
Kissing.
Relax.
Beach.
Friendship.
Music.
Travel.
Music.
Story.
Music.
Home.
Redwoods.
Book.
Will Cather.
Goal.
Love.
Done. That's all the words. Music was on my list, but you said it already and I left off. I want to know more. Tell me more about why music was such a big part of all of those words.
Music. I'm the youngest of 7 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And music is the one way I could escape. My parents bought us headsets, the little Radio Shack recorders with the cassettes and then the headphones. And we were loud. We were obnoxious. We lived on farm animals and stuff. And it was always like too much noise for me. So music is my escape. And also music is a good way, like an excuse to get someplace else. Like my favorite band last year was The Descendants. So I went to all sorts of places to see The Descendants because that was like the adventure point, right? And then music is almost one of those things that everyone likes and everyone can connect with, even if you argue with them that they like jazz and you like punk. Like it's just like something that everyone can talk about.
That's a good way to think about it. Do you play any instruments?
Do I play any instruments? Well, no, but I have a ukulele and I have a guitar and I did play brass growing up.
Which brass?
Well, I wanted to play the trombone, but my arm wasn't long enough. so I played the trumpet and the French horn.
Okay. Well, that's fun.
I love that. Yeah, I was Wendy didn't ask. I was like, well, I'm sensing a pattern with these answers. But from what I know, and one of the times that I've hung out with you, AmyJune, I do know that you love your music and you love to travel for concerts, and it's a big part of your life. I would like to dive deeper into that, but I want to start. On these episodes, I feel like I've started. Well, thanks for playing our game, first of all, and then I've oftentimes started at like the beginning where I'm like, tell me where you grew up, AmyJune. I actually want to start with because you have such a unique position inside of open source. Like, how does one find themselves as a certification community architect at the Linux Foundation? Like, how does someone become the person that writes the exams that open source individuals need to take?
Okay. Well, it starts with getting laid off by Red Hat. And it starts with that. And then someone from the Linux Foundation reaching out to you and said, I don't know what you do, but I think that you can do that on my team. So I met with someone from the Linux Foundation and told them about my developer relations and like my SME expertise, because I don't actually write the exams. I corral cats to write the exams for us. So I find people in the emerging technologies that have the subject matter expertise to write the exams. And then I go in and then I do like some of the odds and ends around that. But yeah, it wasn't a job I sought out to do. It was just a job that, because I know everyone, someone reached out to me when they found out what Red Hat did to a whole bunch of us. And it was like, come with me. I want you. I like you. And that's a really good feeling when someone says, I don't know what you do, but we'll find a place on the team for you. So.
Well, I think that leads really strongly into, obviously you had that ability, that path in your life, because I'm assuming networking and being around the right people. So tell me a little bit you've been a big networker since I've known you, AmyJune. Like you know a lot of people. You obviously are in the community. How, I mean, it seems kind of like a very easy question to answer, but what kind of role has networking played in, I guess, in your adult life, not just like in your career, but just in general? It seems like you're a very outgoing people person. And I'd like to, yeah, I think there are a lot of people that might be listening to this that are not as extroverted. And I would say, um, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I don't know if I'm extroverted. I'm definitely a cheerleader of people, you know. I want everyone to be successful, and that's one of the things in life that's got moved me forward is like, you're going to tell me your story, I'm going to try to help you out, right? Um, I was a nurse for a really long time. I still am a nurse, but I don't actively nurse all the time now. Um, but when I got into tech, it was really more about that networking because the first agency I worked with, I had the opportunity to do some public speaking. And they said, that's great. And I said, I want to go to more events. And they said, that's great. But to go to events, you have to public speak more. You have to get sessions accepted, that kind of thing. And when you are a public speaker in open source, you're kind of thought of as a leader a little bit, right? People ask you questions. You have this expertise. You want to share your information with them. And that's kind of where I started with the networking, is just sharing that information. And then I got turned on to the Drupal mentoring team, and I'm not a developer, but I wanted to contribute to Drupal. And so I found a way to teach people how to contribute to Drupal, but without being a programmer or a developer. And that's really when that networking started, was like, hey, I'm a project manager. Someone would be like, oh, go ask AmyJune what you can do on Contrib Day, because she has an idea for you, you know. And that's just like sort of that branching out and like just making sure that people know that I'm available for them, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help people succeed. That's that cheerleader part. So I think I'm more of a cheerleader than an extrovert.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I like what you just said, though. You brought up a good point, because up to this point, we've had a lot of people on this podcast that have been direct programmers contributing to open source via a lot of different things, but like very much with their coding expertise, right? And you said something that was like, I wanted to be able to contribute to Drupal, and I'm not a Drupal developer, and so I like that, because a lot of people might be wanting to contribute to Drupal, and I don't think that anybody understands how many ways there are. So like, could you potentially go through like what are ways that you see like right now in the ecosystem, whether that's Drupal or in open source in general, that you feel like people could maybe go out there and contribute in different ways, where they don't have to sit in front of a computer and actually be in a terminal. They can just, give back to open source in a very distinct way.
Yeah. So there's even ways that people who aren't developers to get into the terminal and code, you know, like with co-working sessions and that, but I know that's not your question. You know, organizing a meetup or a camp for your specific technology, because a lot of times when people say get into Drupal or get into Kubernetes, the first exposure they have to the community is their local meetup. And so being someone that supports locals, it's a wonderful way to meet people. Event organization is not easy, but it's not coding, you know. And then once you get to there, you can go to like the regional level. You can start doing like program selection at things like DrupalCon. You can teach people, you can mentor. You know, teaching people is a wonderful way to give back, because not one person does things the same way. So say I give a class on accessibility on how to do X, Y, and Z. If my friend Carrie Fisher gives that same class, she's going to have a different way of teaching it and explaining it and what the end goal is. And so that's a wonderful way to give back. But as far as like my major technology that I work the most in is Drupal. When I help people in Contrib Day, like with the first time contributor workshops, or, you know, the mentoring tables at DrupalCon itself during contribution day, when we have people who come in who aren't coders, there's things that they can work on for modules like documentation, testing the documentation, things like that. So there's even like giving back to core without the code part.
Yeah, I think documentation is a huge aspect that is oftentimes lacking almost in every other framework that we've come across too. It's like documentation is a big deal.
And that's actually how I got into Drupal contributions. Was I was doing some support work where I was like researching modules. This was Drupal 6, Drupal 7 days. And I wanted to install a module for a university I worked at. And I'm like, I have no idea how this module works. There's all these gaps. And so the developer came in and goes, oh, no, it's so straightforward. I go, no, you don't understand. I'm not a developer and there's missing these steps. So that was like the perfect introduction for me for documentation and testing software and testing the steps to replicate. And that's how I got into Drupal core contributions, was through READMEs and external documentation. So
Yeah, I like that. Well, since you mentioned QA, Wendy started her career also in QA as well. How did you kind of get into QA?
okay. So, not on purpose. What happened was I transitioned from being a hospice nurse full time into working in tech. And I took Mike Anello's Drupal Easy class, and he got me an internship at a little shop called Kalamuna, and they had me doing like support work. Great. It was wonderful. But they had me doing some accessibility work. And I was like, wait, something kind of clicked. And I was like, y'all can make, not Kalamuna, but like the world, y'all in general can make websites that are accessible, and you don't. Like, it was this amazing thing for me, because as a hospice nurse, I would work with people. Like, I would have to read their email, and they're in their last days, and the privacy involved in like not being able to access the software. But then when I learned that stuff is like baked into most of our open source CMSs, but we take it out to look pretty. I was like, what fresh hell are we in that we, exclude all these people? So that's when I got into QA, was really doing like accessibility audits and that sort of thing. And that sort of expanded from there. It was that accessibility work, because I would get a ticket and they'd be like, AmyJune, we're not asking you to do all this. I'm like, well, you said QA the page. So I'm QAing the page. And with QAing the page, I noticed that the stuff isn't highlighted on focus. And they're like, but that's not what we asked you to QA. So that's how I got into it.
You're like, sorry, I'm over delivering.
Sorry for the churn. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's similar, to Wendy. It's like, once again, Wendy, I don't think Wendy, like, she just kind of fell into QA. Why, right, Wendy? Because you just knew
I did.
you knew
I
the
worked in data
platform well.
services at a credit repair firm, and I'm a fast typer. I was just kind of taking a break from school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in school, so I just took a job in data services. And that meant that I used the internal application that they created more extensively than maybe different roles than the company. And that meant that I learned where all the bugs were. I learned how to work around all of them. I was very familiar with how the application was used. So when a job in QA opened up, they kind of approached me as someone who knew the application rather than technology, and they were willing to teach me the tech part. I learned how to write queries. And anyway, they gave me the job, even though I had no tech experience. The person who gave me that job turned out to be Aaron Frost. That was a very long time ago. That's how we first met. 2009, I think, is when he gave me that opportunity. Aaron Frost is the founder of Hero Devs. That's later down the line. We won't talk about the whole story because it's not relevant here. But I just kind of learned it on the job. And I'm similar to you when I got into QA, where I was coming from a user perspective rather than a tech perspective. And sometimes users think about things differently than maybe the way they were designed, because we're humans. And sometimes when you're thinking about, creating an application in a vacuum based on a list of requirements, you forget the humanity part of it. So it's interesting to hear your perspective as well. You're bringing in all these things. Like, I'm thinking at this from you were thinking about it from your perspective of people who have a hard time reading on the computer in their later days of life. So you kind of bring that into it. I did the same thing. Maybe not. I'm not a hospice nurse, but I came from, people who use it all the time, right? Like, this text is too small,
Yeah.
or this
You
formatting
were
is
a
off.
user.
Clients hate it. Just
Yeah.
you bring your personal experience and match it up, and that can either make or break you in whatever it is you choose to do.
Yeah. I love that. I feel out of the loop though. I've never been a QA engineer. But so okay, what was I've been around hospice in my life, AmyJune. I've known hospice. So this might be a very easy answer, but what was the deciding factor of you moving from hospice? And I know you still do hospice to tech.
So I still do hospice to keep my nut license, because maybe I won't like tech, because all y'all are weirdos. But the final straw was coming home and looking at my elbow and going, is that poop or chocolate? And I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. And there was a lot of other things, but that was like that final straw. It was like coming home with someone else's poop on my shoulder, because it's bad enough if it's your own poop on your shoulder, but someone else or on your elbow. So it's just I've been doing it for many, 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 many years. And I really enjoy my job. I really enjoyed like helping people move on to the next part of their lives, like reverse midwifery. But there's a lot of toll that comes along with that. Like we get a lot of PTO on purpose because it's a really hard job. And, as you get older in life and your kids become teenagers and all of the things, like there's just perspectives that you no longer have. You might lose your empathy and compassion, which is not good. And I would rather leave before that happens and before I get anyone else's poop on me than like go out sourly. Right. So
Yeah.
I know that was a long answer.
No, that's fair. No, you're absolutely right there. It is a daunting profession to be in, and because the very nature of hospice is to, it is to, like, you will not have your person for very long. It is a revolving. It's not it's not even a revolving door. I guess. I guess that's maybe the terminology you use, but it's more of just like, you'll know this person for a little while, but the very essence of hospice is that this person is on their way to the next chapter, whatever that is for them, right? So I get that. So you moved into tech. I mean, why did you choose tech out of everything else? You know, maybe
The
it was very
part
practical.
The
I don't know.
partner I was with was in Drupal and suggested moving into Drupal. And I was doing some like content entry on a website and was always asking them to like, oh, I need a field that does this. And they said, well, instead of me doing that for you all the time, why don't you learn Drupal? And I went into, the Drupal Easy class with Mike, and I learned the value of open source software. And that was amazing to me. The whole concept of open source software was enough to be like, everything else, I'm going to do open source software. I didn't care if it was Drupal, just that whole idea of, how it can help elevate socioeconomic communities that are lower than mine, help marginalized communities. That we can see all of the things that people do in the software, just all of that stuff, just sort of like burst my head open. And then just Drupal, the community is what kept me mostly in Drupal my career. Like our community is so special.
Absolutely. I do agree. I do agree. We I was at a Drupal meetup last night, and I said the exact same thing that I'll say to you. It's just continually surprises me how tight knit the Drupal community is out of almost every community I've seen at this point. Like, y'all truly do want just Drupal to succeed, and y'all like the people that are there. There's all the things that come along with just getting a group of people in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I feel like at the end of the day, y'all really just want to see Drupal get better and to live on and continue, and it's really cool to see. So hospice to tech, Drupal. I think it's a good time for us to talk about the nursing home of tech, which is Hero Devs. So just give me 30 seconds. Everyday Heroes is brought to you by Hero Devs. Hero Devs offers secure drop-in replacements for your end-of-life open source software through our never-ending support product line. You get to stay compliant with the likes of SOC 2 and HIPAA and FedRAMP and all the other acronyms and regulatory bodies you can think of, all while also getting real vulnerability remediation. You don't have to choose between a new feature and security, and with over 800 clients, you can be confident that your unsupported open source is in good hands. So if you need us, we're here. And if you don't, well, that probably means you've migrated to the newest version. So huzzah! Either way, visit herodevs.com to learn more. Now back to your regular scheduled programming. Peace! Okay, AmyJune, I think it's time that we play our second game of the episode. Wendy, you want to tell her what she's won? I mean, she gets to
What? Whatever.
tell her what she's
Just
won.
playing the game makes us all winners. We're going to play a game called Fork, Star, or Deprecate that we definitely made up. I'm going to say anything from an open source tool to a programming language to whatever it is something that feels relatable to you. I promise I went through the list beforehand. To a ridiculous concept that we made up. And then you decide whether you'd like to fork it so that you can improve it, star it, which means leave it alone, or deprecate it, retire it entirely. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
There's some trepidation, but I got it.
It's okay. Okay. The Linux Foundation's training and certification programs. Would you fork it, star it, or deprecate it?
I'd fork it.
Okay. Open source dev swag culture.
I'd deprecate it.
Okay.
No swag for AmyJune. No swag for AmyJune.
There's only so many like stress balls that you need, you know? Sorry.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I have a stress ball and 3 rubber ducks over here.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. No one needs 5 ducks or whatever. Except me.
Doesn't stop us from giving them 5 ducks though, right?
If someone gave me 5 more ducks, I would take them. Wix and Squarespace for CMS alternatives.
You know what I'm going to say here. Deprecate.
I put one on there for you, I promise. Okay, next one. Becoming a professional QA engineer.
Who?
Anybody. Just the concept of becoming.
Fork it.
Star, or deprecate. Fork
it.
Okay. How about this one? No meetings days.
I will leave that one alone because that sounds glorious.
Star. Okay.
Star.
Okay. A certification roulette tool that randomly assigns certifications based on past projects.
Ooh, fork it.
Okay. And then the last one, something called Cat GPT, which is AI that only answers in cat memes.
Ooh, fork it.
How would you improve it?
Have it on all AI, like even if you see like always that's the last thing that spits out, right? You know,
just here's your answer plus a cat meme. Yeah, exactly.
Plus a cat meme.
That's
yay!
Yeah, that's the second game. And I could foresee your Wix and Squarespace answer, and with Drupal CMS being delivered this year, that it is a much closer alternative in terms of functionality.
They have their space, but as a CMS, maybe not. So that was the word that like, am I ever going to make a Wix or Squarespace site? No. But
I don't know. I don't know if you are.
And if you did, you don't have to tell us.
Are you going to go back into hospice, AmyJune? I have no idea. That's your journey. But no, thanks for playing the game. I would love to now move into something that's been burning inside of me to know. What is this whole thing with the word diarrhea?
Okay. So I'm old. Okay. I am so old that when I first started nursing, we did paper charting and you'd have to spell everything out. And like I would learn how to spell diarrhea. Okay. So move into tech, you have spell check and everybody loses the ability to spell words. But I just thought it was amazing that I could still spell diarrhea. DIARRHEA is not intuitive. So I put it on my resume and it got me my job at opensource.com at Red Hat. So they said they had all of these applications that they went through, but they had never seen the word diarrhea on a resume. And it was intriguing to them. What type of person would put that on their resume? And I got hired. So now I keep it on there and I keep it on LinkedIn because it's an amazing fact. And then I had this one like recruiting thing happen, and I said, "Can you look at my resume?" She goes, "Oh, you got to take the word diarrhea off your resume." I'm like, if a shop or a consultancy or whoever I work with can't handle me having that on my resume, I don't think I can work for them. So it's like a litmus test too, right?
Yeah,
I think it's hilarious. I crack myself up. So
I love it.
And just the fact that it got me a job, that's amazing.
Yeah, and at Red Hat, no less, too, which is a large company. I'm sure when you joined, it was already large. So that's funny. Well, I think that's It's very real though. And so just like I feel like a little tip, I've now hired 3 or 4 people, 5 people now at Hero Devs, and I can say that um, you got to stand out.
I want to learn more about your journey to becoming where you are today. Earlier on in the podcast, we asked the question, how does one become you?
So I'd like to start with my journey in tech in 2015 because the other stuff, it's like a lifetime ago, right? It's a lifetime ago. But, in tech, what happened was that aha moment with open source and realizing how important open source was to me. The next aha moment was discovering that I am in no way ever going to be a developer. I mean, no two words around it. It's just not going to happen. It's not my thing. I do not care enough, right? So, but I loved my Drupal people and I love my open source people. So, what can I do to keep my job in tech, basically? And so I had a friend who owned a consultancy called Canopy, and she took a risk, took a chance on me. And I became like her, you know how the thing is, you're like, if you use open source, if you depend on open source depends on you, and you should really be giving back. And so she had me doing a lot of the giving back, and it didn't matter. So she had me go to camps and teach classes on accessibility. She was a big advocate for me being a mentor in the mentoring space, because the more exposure, and it's not totally altruistic, right? The more exposure her company has, the more talent recruitment there is. And so I really got into that like developer advocacy role, and like they used other technologies. So I had to get into that other CMS space that has a lot of market share, but we don't need to talk about. So I branched out into like working on that different CMS. And then I branched out into accessibility. And then I branched out into community management and all of these things. And they all sort of like, it was like a bumper cars. I had the privilege of being able to experiment with what I wanted to do and how to integrate them all. And now I have like all these really rich experiences in tech that I can use at opensource.com, right? Because in opensource.com, I was the community manager for collecting articles on all different kinds of tech. And so having that experience in different tech. And now I work at the Linux Foundation, and I work with emerging technologies from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation that are trying to get their things going. And so it's just all about like having these spaces that I can help incubate and grow and become projects on their own. And that's really kind of special for me, is helping that. And then, like I said, that natural bumper cars is, I think some people can get kind of wound up on like sticking to what they do and getting better at that one thing, but not utilizing all of those skills at once, and like giving yourself the permission to kind of be a beginner again, stepping down from a leadership role. Like right now, I'm like actively stepping down from Drupal mentor coordinator, because when I say no, it gives someone else a chance to say yes, and stepping down gracefully is part of being a leader. So that way I could move into the conflict resolution team. And now I'm learning about that kind of stuff. So allowing yourself to get into those leadership roles, mentor someone into those, and then move on to the next thing you might have some interest in or not have an interest in, but there's a gap to fill. Just being able to take those chances and being willing to not be good at what you do for a while. And I'm really good at that.
Yep. That's a very undervalued thing, I think, with anybody that I come across. Is, are you just willing to maybe look stupid's not the right word, but are you willing to look stupid for a little while, and just humble yourself and learn until you can get it right? Because I don't think nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to do everything perfectly right. So everybody goes through their learning curve. I can't stand the toxic culture there is on like LinkedIn or anything else, where it's like I'm always a master and never everything I do is infallible. And I'm like, well, I know that's not true. Also, like it's just the whole like Instagram facade moment that's coming now to the tech world, where it's like, show me all the shit that went wrong. Like that's what I want to see, because like you learned all your lessons. You're successful. I'm not going to say that you're not successful, at least financially, but it's like you learned your lessons from making mistakes, probably, like, or being lucky, but at least be honest with those two things. Man, I like that. I think it's cool. It's been really cool to have you on, AmyJune, because I think a lot of people, once again, they they see open source software and they think that you have to be a developer to be in it, to contribute to it, to be a part of the community, to do anything like that. And it's cool to see someone who was a QA engineer and is not a Drupal developer become a critical part of the Drupal community, to have contributed in a lot of different ways. And so thanks for coming on and showcasing all the different avenues and paths that there are for somebody to do that. So I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. I like telling my story because other people can have those stories, but they don't celebrate them, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think, yes, and there's this move of a lot of people into tech, right? Or like a lot of companies are just becoming tech companies. And so like you're coming from, like there's a lot of stories out there of I'm coming from hospice into tech, or but in their various industry, right? Where it's like I want to get into tech, or they feel like there's more security in tech, whatever that looks like for them. And so it is really cool to hear your story, and I appreciate you coming on. Before we kind of wrap things up completely, we do have one last game, AmyJune.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready?
Wendy, we do. We have one more game. Our final game of the show is called Not My Job. We will ask you 3 questions that have nothing to do with your job in the real world or anything else we've talked about today or ever, and everything to do with what you know about weird inventions throughout history. Are you ready?
Interesting one.
Yes.
Okay. Question 1.
Oh, there's more than one? Okay.
What was the purpose of the cat piano, which is an 18th century invention? Was it A, a musical instrument designed for cats to play, B, a piano that used cats' tails to create sound, or C, a prank piano that sprayed water when played?
I will go with A.
A musical instrument designed for cats to play. Incorrect. It was B, a piano that used cats' tails to create sound.
Oh, are we talking cattails like the plant or the animal?
The animal.
Oh, okay.
The cat piano used cats placed in a row with their tails stretched under a keyboard. Pressing a key would strike a cat's tail, causing it to yowl.
Oh, it was like
allegedly invented to entertain royalty.
Oh my gosh.
Invented to entertain royalty. Man.
The cat piano. Who knew?
Wow. Okay. I'm ready for number 2 already. I'm learning something.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. What unusual feature did the tomaton, which is a Japanese invention, have? A, it allowed users to eat tomatoes while jogging. B, it automatically peeled and sliced tomatoes. Or C, it was a tomato-shaped alarm clock.
I'm going to go B.
The answer was A. It allowed users to eat animals. Or tomatoes. Let me say that again. Wow. I changed the answer on you there.
Yeah.
I would have got it right then,
It allowed users to eat tomatoes while jogging.
Yeah.
I'm probably saying it wrong, but tomaton was a wearable robot that sat on your shoulders and fed you tomatoes as you ran. It was designed to promote healthy snacking during marathons.
Wild invention.
Tomatoes, not animals, okay?
Yeah. I could have sworn.
I wonder if it
Yeah.
I wonder if it had a pitch where it flipped it up and you had to catch it like that, or did it shove it in your face?
Yeah, it was just like
oh my gosh.
It's just like it was hitting your cheek with it, right? It's like you have to turn your mouth for it. Sorry for every audio person who didn't see me do that.
All right, question number 3. Number 3 of 3. Here we go. Well, I have a couple of options. I'm gonna do this one. What was the motorized ice cream cone, which was patented in the early 2000s, designed to do? I'm going to say that question again because I stumbled over all the words. Last question. What was the motorized ice cream cone patented in the early 2000s designed to do? A. Keep ice cream cold while outdoors. B. Spin the ice cream for you as you lick it. Or C. Automatically refill with more ice cream.
I'm going to go B. I really need something to spin that ice cream for me.
The answer is B. Spin that ice cream as you lick it. It rotated the ice cream so you wouldn't have to move your tongue while eating it.
Oh, God. Oh,
Game!
yay. It's like sometimes you're like you're looking at inventions and you're like, man, is it real? Like, it's one of those things where you're like, I invented something for a problem that doesn't really exist. Yeah. It's like it doesn't exist. That was amazing. Great job, AmyJune. Hey, 1 out of 3 is not bad. Who would have guessed that? Who would have
The
guessed
most
that
important
cats-
one.
Yeah, and the most important one. And also, once again, not your job. Not your job to understand all these.
Not your job.
The reason we play it. That's
I
the fun of
expected
it.
you to get it wrong.
Well, AmyJune, I have one last question to wrap onto that one. This one's maybe just as hard, but hopefully a little bit more on topic for what is your job. If you had, I asked everybody this one. So if you had one word that you could send every maintainer, contributor, organizer in open source, you could send it. It's like a Git commit or a comment or whatever. You could send a Slack message to everybody. What would that one word be?
Appreciate.
I love that.
Why? Because I appreciate the things that people do that I cannot. Like if it's like, an open source software program and they're developing the software, they're making, they're changing the style to do the way they do things, basic CSS changes. I can't do any of that stuff. So I appreciate every commit that someone does because it's beyond my skill set most of the time. So it's just this and they're moving things forward generally. Typically, not always. Most of our maintainers are working on moving things forward.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty nice thing for us.
I love that. Well, I really appreciate you, AmyJune, for coming on. I appreciate you, Wendy, for being our games master, co-host extraordinaire. And I appreciate you for watching or listening to this wherever you're at. And I hope that you can share it with one of your engineering or non-engineering friends. If you got some insights or a nugget from this this episode with AmyJune, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks again, AmyJune, for joining. We'll talk to y'all heroes later. Bye.
Thank you, Wendy and Hayden.
Thank you.